Call to order the special board meeting, August 19th. If you'll all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 1 is discussion possible action adopt setting a public hearing for September 7th, 2021 to establish a fee schedule for operations of fairgrounds, or approve a motion to reconsider the immediate termination of the lease with the County Fair Association, to seek termination of the lease in a time frame that provides for addressing concerns that may prevent a smooth and successful transition of the operations of the fairgrounds and current scheduling events. Madam Clerk, is Supervisor Angus on the phone?
Supervisor Angus, are you on the line?
All right, we have some people signed up. Jerry McGuire.
Thank you, Chairman, Supervisors, and staff. Jerry McGuire, I'm Chairman of the Mojave County Fair Association. The Fair Association is an Arizona nonprofit corporation. The Fair Association manages and hosts events at the county-owned Mojave County Fairgrounds. The Fair Association is financially solvent. The Fair Association owns assets such as equipment, tools, livestock handling materials, vehicles, technology, intellectual property, chattel, etc. The Fair Association pays all their bills. The Fair Association does not receive $25,000 per year from the Board of Supervisors or the Mojave taxpayers. Actually, that money is set aside by the Board of Supervisors to be used on the fairgrounds for infrastructure and the like projects. After the Board of Supervisors approve those projects, the Fair Association is reimbursed. The Fair Association pays the cost of this stuff, waits until the checks are cleared from the bank, bring the cleared checks to the Board of Supervisors, and usually is paid within 5 to 10 days. That's how it's worked since I've been there. The county attorney dissuaded the Fair Association chairman from reading the current lease before signing the current lease.
I'm
Pardon?
here.
Hello?
Supervisor Angus has joined us.
Can you hear
Is
me?
there somebody else talking? No. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, 1 second, sir.
If I could just interject and,
Sure.
let Mr. McGuire know the way our cameras are with you wearing a hat inside the building, you can't see anything but your hat as far as the audience. I just wanted to point that out. The last time you spoke, you couldn't see your.
Thank you.
Look fine.
The county attorney dissuaded the chairman from reading the current lease before signing the current lease. The Fairground Association filed our July report to the county on time and in full with the most accurate and complete financial reporting in many years, at least since I've been here. The Fair Association applauds the board's suggestion of auditing the Fair Association. Please be sure to look far enough back to help us uncover and explain substantial financial irregularities we found ourselves while conducting our own audit of prior years just a few years ago. I think this is where all this confusion started. The Mojave County Board of Supervisors voted Monday to terminate the Mojave County Fair Association's lease immediately with cause. Upon investigation by the Fair Association from things said at the board meeting, we had staff contact the State Fair and the Governor's Advisory Board, who said that they had heard from somebody that the Mojave County was taking over the fair. The check was ready, they just didn't know who to make it out to. This conversation was prior to Monday's meeting, August 16th. In no way was the governor's grant in jeopardy then, or is it now. The Board of Supervisors found cause for immediate eviction due to the governor's grant funds being in jeopardy that the county created with the confusion of announcing a takeover of the fair prior to the takeover of the fair, which put the grant in jeopardy only to the Fair Association and no one else. Then that was used as cause for the immediate termination. Under the lease agreement, the Fair Association has 30 days to rectify the cause, and you picked 3. The Fair Association has investment-backed expectations for our annual county fair in 4 weeks. The Fair Association stands to have our investments plus our governor's grant taken due to a premature taking of the county. The Fair Association has investment-backed expectations for a youth livestock show scheduled in a week, followed by our fair in 4 weeks, a PRCA rodeo the week following fair, and other events after that. By no means do I intend to say that we're against the county taking back their property. However, the means used by the county were inappropriate. The immediate hostile takeover, the bullying and sullying of the board staff and members was divisive and harmful to many good people. Now we are asked to work together with county staff for a smooth transition. The Fair Association is a great organization, always working hard to work well with other organizations. That is a bunch of what we do. The association board will cooperate with the county as best we can. Please bear in mind we are also protecting our organization for our future as well, and we hope that have your cooperation with that also.
Thank you, sir. Doug School?
Good afternoon. Chairman Johnson, Supervisors, thanks for the opportunity to address you. I am in favor of reconsideration of the immediate takeover of the fairgrounds and the implications of the county trying to conduct a fair. I'm a resident of Kingman. I've been a resident of Mojave County for 40 years. I think this boils down to what kind of fair do we want to have this year and in future years. The county is not prepared to conduct a full-out fair as we know it. The Mojave County Fair Association is. What is a fair to you? Is it a carnival and little else? I grew up in this county. I went to this fair as a child. Have fond memories. I think having a full-out fair is the right thing to do. I think it will set the tone for future fairs. We don't want the first fair that the Mojave County government runs to be a flop. That would be embarrassment and can have harm for future fairs as well. Letting the Fair Association continue their plans and their activities and clearly making that clear to the public would do wonders for making this fair a successful one. To me, county fair is more than just the rides. In fact, I usually try to avoid the rides. To me, it's the pies and pumpkins. It's the photographs, the paintings, the animals, the entertainers, the local dancers, the musicians that come to entertain, where there's something for everyone. So I very much am in favor of reconsideration of the hostile takeover. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Christian Scholl.
Hello, I am Kristen Scholl. I'm a resident of Kingman. I have lived by the fairgrounds for 17 years. My children have always entered the fair every year. They've looked forward to the fair. They've made plans way in advance. It's been a good growth opportunity for them to make those plans and to set about to do it. I'm a current member of the Fair Association. I'm currently serving as the Fair Committee Chair this year, and I am definitely in favor of you reconsidering an immediate termination to the lease. As the Fair Committee, we've been planning the fair for months. We've signed contract with entertainers, with local gymnasts that are planning and coming and performing. Their families are planning to watch them. We've got food vendors lined up, indoor and outdoor commercial vendors, providers of services, including ice, porta potties, lights, dumpsters. We've been taking in payments to register individual exhibitors for judging. We already have, we've distributed hundreds of flyers in the communities to promote the fair, and we've started taking online entries. So far, we have around 1,500 entries entered in the fair for September. This includes open exhibits, which are the exhibits in the building. We've got lots of school children who enter there. We've got open livestock, small stock, gymkhana, junior livestock, and 4-H and FFA. More than half of these entries are children and youth, some who have been preparing and looking forward to the fair for a year or more. I have been answering phone calls from teachers and emails from teachers and from, can't think of the right word, not teachers, but the special needs schools for adults and for youth, where the therapist or the schools are helping their students enter items in the fair. And they have assured me that their kids were sadly disappointed to miss the fair last year, and so they've been looking forward to this year entering the fair. We have volunteer superintendents lined up to handle the 45 different departments. We have judges lined up. I've got more than 360 school children and chaperones already registered to attend the fair on our school day. For many of these students, the teachers have told me that some of these students, it's their only trip out of town to attend the fair. I think that's an important thing for kids to experience something outside of their town if that's not something they get to experience. The move to take over the fair immediately or just prior to the opening of the fair has caused confusion and problems. Planning for the fair is at a standstill. Sponsors do not know if they are donating to the Mojave County Fair Association or if they're donating to the county government. I have been told by numerous volunteers that if the county does take over the fair, that they won't help this year because they don't feel that it's respectful of the time and energy that they have already spent on organizing and helping with the fair. And that's not as a threat, it's just a statement. That's what I've been told. Please let the Fair Committee and the Fair Association finish their commitments to the children and youth in Mojave County. Thank you for your time.
Hello, hi, Becky Fossen. I live here in Kingman, and I am a member of the Fair Association Board of Directors. First of all, what I wanted to do, I wanted to clear up something that I stated the other day when I was called down to speak. I found out, I had talked about the loan that we had taken out for the $40,000 and said that it was on the assets that the Fair Association owned. I found out after the meeting when I stopped at the bank that the bank actually decided to make that an unsecured loan, so I did want to clear that up. I don't want you to think that I gave you bad information. I gave you what I knew at the time. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. And then I want to take this opportunity to thank Kristen. You have no idea how hard she has worked at coming in at kind of a really late date. I mean, we're on the end of COVID, not knowing if we were going to have a fair, really struggling through all of these changeovers in management and all of the things. And she has taken the ball and ran with it. And she has created a fair like all the fairs that we have had before with all of the volunteers and everything. So I think that it's really important to have that for our community and our kids. And when you have people that have that kind of passion, they deserve that. And then I also want to say thanks to Sam and the team here. I would say probably the last 3 days, I haven't done much of anything else than talk to State Fair Association people, county people, our board, trying to figure out how to make this move forward in the best way possible for everyone. And I really, truly believe that everybody has the same goal in mind, but we need to be given the opportunity to finish what we started. So I would ask, Sam and I have talked about a few dates. There are a couple of things coming up. In a couple of weeks, there's a junior livestock auction and show, which is, again, it's a couple of weeks. There's contracts that have been done. There are, kids that have worked really hard to do this. After that, of course, we have the fair. Everybody knows that. We have a rodeo coming up. Again, that's in negotiations, but it's going to go on as it always does. And that is all before September 30th. And then in October, there's a Sela auction, which is also really important to the kids. So I would ask that you would allow the Fair Association to complete those things that they've already contracted. It does fall within the 90 days. And that would just be what I would ask for you to please let us finish what we started. And I think if we work together, as we spoke yesterday, the county can come along with us as we're doing that and learn what really goes into this. It's a lot of work, and a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into this. So I just really appreciate your consideration for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Guess I'll ask the attorney how he wants to handle this. We have two items on here, basically, at least under this one. We have setting of fees, which is probably what the board has moved forward on from the motion. Or do you think we should address the reconsideration first?
Here, as I try to sort through the two items, I think setting the fee can be done separately from this, or setting a date to set the fee, as noted in the backup. For the agenda items, there's two different statutes that may apply. One of them requires a 15-day posting before setting the fee. So certainly if the county is moving forward with the immediate takeover, in other words, within 30 days or on that 30-day mark, assuming the Fair Association would not be able to remedy the causes that may be listed, then we really need to get moving forward on setting the fees. The other one is a 60-day notice of fees being set. That one specifically, the statute references fees being set on businesses. Whether that applies to the fair as an event is probably less clear in that, these are individuals typically coming in to the fair and paying parking and other things. But the flip side of that is there's lots of vendors, lots of, from the carnival and the performers and so on, that certainly may be considered businesses. They would be required to have a 60-day notice. So those fees would not be set within 60 days to be completed before the fair. The other events, that are listed on the fair's calendar that Ms. Fossen mentioned may be within that 60-day time frame of setting, posting the proposed fees and holding the meeting. So, Mr. Chair, to your question on can we do them separately, these items, I think we can, as long as we have in mind, what those time frames are, whether we're setting a date to set the fees now, or we're kind of considering a different date for the seeking termination of the current lease.
I
Chairman.
guess a yes or no would have been quick. I guess the first thing that we'll need to do then is there any interest from the board to do a reconsideration?
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Johnson.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, sir. Since Monday, I've been working pretty closely with the county manager's office, and I know the county manager's office has been in several meetings, working with Becky, the Mojave County Fair Association, and I'd like to know if, from those meetings since Monday, if you have a recommendation as far as a reconsideration.
thank you.
I guess before we do that, the question I would have would be to the attorney, before we make a discussion, we have to have a reconsideration if we're going to discuss something, wouldn't we? I mean, I would just want to make sure we do it the correct way so we don't.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just in inserting myself to help the county attorney perhaps answer this question, and that would be to suggest we bifurcate the timeline of the lease termination from the setting of fees and take the timeline first. That discussion could provide for opportunity to lay out and come back and work with the board on setting those fees. So if that's okay with you, I have a couple of comments and briefing to the board, things that we've been working on since Monday. If I may proceed.
Is that on the fees?
No, Mr. Chairman, it has to do with the timeline of termination of the lease and who does what, because I think that is key at this point.
Well, I guess my question again to the attorney is, to do this discussion, the board made a decision on Monday. And we either need to reconsider so we can discuss further, or this meeting is pretty much over.
Chairman Johnson.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
If I may, I would like to make a motion for reconsideration for discussion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second.
She voted no, so.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you voted no on that, so. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Manager Elters, if you would
Thank you.
share what you've learned.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Lingenfelter. So based on the board vote on Monday during the board meeting to bring the Mojave County Fairground operations into the county system, staff proceeded to review and execute the required steps to complete that task. We have inventoried existing contracts and whether those are transferable or not, and the timeline to accomplish that. We have reviewed and considered the Board of Supervisor approval timeline related to fees and agreements and so on. We also looked at the schedules and the efforts of currently planned events, such as the ones you heard about, the livestock, the county fair, and the rodeo. Those are all in August and September. And we are mindful of the number of volunteers and civic groups that have worked on that up to this point. So additionally, we did reach out and have met with the Fairground Association Board. Our discussion was productive, and we have an understanding of what we all believe is best for county residents, and that is to successfully have this fair this year. Lastly, we also had a discussion with the State Fair Association director and the chairman of the committee that serves as the governor advisory committee. Based on these discussions, it is clear, at least to us, Mr. Chairman and board members, that cooperating to achieve a successful county fair is really a common goal for all of us. and a timely transition based on best practices and realistic timelines and limitation is a good path forward. So there are 3 events, as you have already heard. These have contracts in place. They have deposits as well as hours of volunteer times that have taken place, and they're ready to move forward. They're scheduled in late August, mid-September, and late September. So with that in mind, the Fairground Association has recognized, I would say, the benefit of working together, and has communicated with us really technically 2 different timelines. One is a desirable one, which is about 75 days from now, and that would fall between the 30-day that is minimum for the for cause termination, and the 90 days that is for no cause. So that 75 days would take it past that SELA auction that you heard about. But the other date is a really must date for the Fairground Association, which is about 45 days, would take it to the end of September and would allow for those 3 events to take place. We have also received a response from the state fair. I have shared that letter with you, and it's clear that the letter asks for some information as to who's going to take the lead, and that will determine how the funds will be dispersed. But it also promotes working together to get through this transition period. So with that said, a plausible path forward, we believe, is to honor those existing arrangements and make use of the existing contracts. That would allow the Fairground Association to carry on and conduct or produce, be responsible for this, for the fair and those 2 additional events and that auction, and the county be in a supportive role, working with them, monitoring and cooperating to the extent needed and necessary. And so with that, to Supervisor Lingenfelter recommendation, staff recommendation would be to define this term of immediate termination of the lease to mean that it would be a time that both parties agreed to, and it would be to be set a day or 2 or the end of the week when this SELA auction takes place, which is about 75 days from now. That would be the staff recommendation. We believe it's a good path forward, and we can work with it. If that is the case, then we can come back to the board and set rates and act on other necessary steps that are required for us to make a clean handoff of this baton and of the responsibility. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with Supervisor Bishop. You have any questions? County Manager?
I'm a little confused as to how we went from a discussion that Supervisor Lingenfelter had with the State Fair Association to the discrepancy that we now have with the written letter. I guess it really doesn't matter, but that's concerning to me, the misinformation that we, meaning the board, made on the last meeting. That's just concerning to me that we didn't have accurate information at that time, but that's the only question I have.
Supervisor Gould?
Nothing today.
Supervisor Lingenfelter?
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. To clarify Supervisor Bishop's point, I don't think there was misleading at all. In fact, this week, Manager Elters was in my office, and we spoke to Anel Costello, the Executive Director of the State Fair Board, and she verbally confirmed that there was a hold on that check, and they didn't know what was going on, and that they wanted an MOU. They were going to fund all of the prior commitments that had been made, and then the balance of those funds, they wanted an MOU to talk about how those are going to be spent. So, still a concern. We haven't received those funds yet. It needs to be fully described how those funds are going to be received. And everything that's still in this document regarding the facility condition, and we can go through those line by line if we need to, are still grounds for doing what we're doing. It's the right thing to do for the citizens of Mojave County. Thank you.
Supervisor Angus, do you have any questions?
Nothing.
Oh, I feel bad. I've got a ton of questions. I guess one question that, and I don't know that Supervisor Lingenfelter said he did it, but if we're taking this over, who actually made the initial contact with the State Fair Association? County manager? We talked about that they weren't going to, the fairgrounds wasn't going to receive the the money.
Mr. Chairman, board members, my first contact with the State Fair Association was after the board meeting on Monday. Actually, it was not until Tuesday as we started to review, as I noted in my comments, the steps required to get us through the implementation of the board decision. So I do not know who made contact. I know there was a conference last week in Phoenix where I honestly don't know even the specific nature, but I know Miss Becky Fossen as well as Kristen Zimmerman from our team attended that conference. That's about the extent of my knowledge, but my initial contact with the State Fair was after the board meeting as we started to act and take steps to implement the board decision.
Okay. All right. Now we talked about the Fair Association has these events already scheduled. I guess another question I have might be for the county attorney. State statute limits how much counties can spend on the fair and also limits how much the State Fair Board can spend as well. State statute limits state funding of no more than $1,000 per county, and we're talking about $157,000. Do we know how this money is coming about if state statute limits the amount of money?
Mr. Chairman, I think you may be referring to ARS 11-258 for a county of our size of 200,000 or more. The county can spend no more than $100,000 on a county fair fund. And there are other areas. I have read through I think you're mentioning another one where it was $1,000 for kind of something separate. I've read that statutory history regarding this statute, the legislature's staff dialogue on it, and things of that nature that sometimes adds clarity into what they're meaning. That $100,000, my understanding of that statute is specifically for the fair. And that would be money that is raised from, other revenue that the county receives that is then moved over to or used to pay for the fair. In other words, like property tax dollars supporting the fair. Outside of those dollars, there's no limit on the county spending to operate a fairgrounds, in other words, holding other events. There's also not a similar limitation going back to specifically a fair revenue that is generated in holding an event, for example, for leasing the facilities and other things, parking and things of that nature, those could be used on supporting that event as well. Those would be the fees. But these are part of what the county needs to be transitioning and preparing for, is setting up the appropriate funds in making sure that the county does not overspend or misspend, as you're implying by what is allowed by statute. With regards to the state board's funds, those grant funds, those aren't limited by the county's funding either. Those wouldn't be part of the 100,000 that is limited by ARS 11258.
With the cap that's in the Arizona revised statutes, that's still a good cap, even though it's been gone over by the state and the...
Mr. Chair, yes, that cap that I just mentioned is a valid cap as it relates to the county using, for example, general fund dollars, property fund raised money, for example. The county could not spend more than that to hold a fair. Again, that's separate from enterprise funds or funds that revenues generated by the fairground or the fair itself.
Okay. Have we looked into what the county will do if the county moves ahead now that we have a reconsideration? We gave up our liquor license, and obviously it takes a liquor license to run out there unless you're going to have every event get their own, and we collect no revenues from it. Has that been thought over by the county yet, Mr. Elters?
Mr. Chairman, board members, no, we have not. We have not analyzed or considered that prior to the board decision on Monday. And since then, as I noted, we have been reviewing the various aspects of the whole operation, and that this is one of them that we would have to address.
All right. Have we sent out facilities, Mr. Meeting out there to look at the fair? Obviously, if we take it over, we have different rules that have to be followed. Has Mr. Meeting looked at it out there to decide if we have to put money into ADA, electrical, because we've seen the pictures and stuff that have come back to us when we have our risk management go out there, but once we take it over, there'll be additional rules that we have to follow. Has Mr. Medding gone out there? Do we have an idea of what it's going to cost?
Mr. Chairman, board member, yes, indeed. Mr. Meeting has been involved and has participated in the inspections that we did back in the summer, and he was out there with Mr. Stewart, Byron Stewart, Monday after the board meeting. We have inspected those items that we've been aware of, and I should mention to you that in our meeting yesterday with the County Fair Association, we did communicate with them that there are some fixing, some repairs that are going to be needed for the safety and security of the public prior to those events. And we said whether it's the Fairground Association taking the lead or whether it's the county. This was yesterday before this meeting, and we did not know which way the board will go, but we did make it clear that there are some things that we would consider critical that would need to be addressed prior to the first event.
Do we have a cost on that, or rough estimate?
Mr. Chairman, board members, I do not have a cost estimate on that. We can dig it up. It has been identified. It has been part of the ongoing inspection that goes back to those elements that have needed attention and have not received it yet. We met back on July, I believe, 23rd. The exact day, but it was on a Thursday. I want to say the 23rd, with two board members, Ms. Becky Fossen, Mr. Aaron Campa, and Ricky Sedona, who was the manager at that time. We reviewed part of those items with them, discussed the status of what was done and what was still remaining to be done. And the list of items that I'm just highlighting to you now would be included.
I know
I'm sorry.
I'll go ahead. In that plan that they talked about that we received, we're looking at, the board has to decide if we're going to put, the estimate is $4 million into that facility in the next 5 years. Do we know, I know the fairgrounds in their association can get away with using porta potties. I doubt that the government can continue to run events with porta potties. And I know I think the ADA restrooms are up to standard now, or at least they've put some in. Is that a trailer or is that a fixed asset, do you know?
Mr. Chairman and board members, there are ADA requirements that are incomplete still today that would need to be completed, and we have communicated that with the Fair Association. I would submit to you that regardless whether it's the Fair Association taking the lead or the county, those ADA compliance issues are a must, and we have communicated that repeatedly, and we have record of it with the association, with the Fair Association.
Now, I also noticed that we've already posted for positions on this, on our website for hiring people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we did a budget, and we didn't have any budget for employees or anybody else out there. Why is somebody posting positions on this already if it's not? Doesn't that go through, finance goes through and okays the posting, our human resources okays that? I'm guessing it goes through the county manager's office. If we didn't budget for that, how are we doing postings for these positions?
Mr. Chairman and board members, I am not aware of those postings, and I would assume they were posted after the board meeting on Monday with staff being proactive. If they were posted before, that would be an action that I'd be very concerned about, and I would deal with immediately. If they were posted after the board meeting on Monday, I would give credit to staff for just being proactive. But I don't know specifically of any posting of positions related to this that are moving forward at this point.
All right, yeah, I guess because this board hasn't set a budget yet, now we're back to not, we haven't made a decision whether we're taking it or not taking it because we've reconsidered our item, but we don't have a budget for the fairgrounds. So hiring of people was kind of concerning to me. What else do we have? If we go if we get into fees, if we do this, there's no fee structure set up given to us. I don't know how the board is going to go ahead with a fee structure. I guess there's a lot of things that we need to discuss now. I don't know if Supervisor Lingenfelter, you had some of this information. Do you have anything else to add to this? I guess if we're going to go forward, we need to have a plan. We need to have a budget. We need to have some direction. I guess what is the pleasure of the board now?
Chairman Johnson, if I may, I respect and thank both Manager Elters and the Fair Association for working hard together this week. I'd like to ask Becky Fossen if she would please come up. Becky, sorry to put you on the spot, but I just want to say thank you for working with Sam and our county staff. So his recommendation was a transition plan, a partnering transition plan for 75 days. With the Fair Association, is that something that you guys can be on board with, that we'll work collaboratively together within that? Is that something that you guys can get behind?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you for all of your work. I appreciate it. I'd like to make a motion, if we could,
Right
to
ahead.
have a 75-day transition period where the County of Mojave would work with the Mojave County Fair Association to have a seamless transition of our Mojave County Fairgrounds, and to allow all of these very important events that have been booked to follow through, and that we all continue to work together to make this as good as it can be. Thank you.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion, Supervisor Gould.
No, I'm ready to vote.
Oh, I guess the one question I would have for discussion would be, we still don't know if the Fair Association is good with 75 days. They haven't said one way or the other, because I'm guessing they haven't voted yet to find out, because we just made the motion. But I would think the 90-day would be the safer bet if you were going ahead, but that's all I had. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Chairman Johnson,
Supervisor Bishop.
I'll be voting no on this because I don't think 75 days is really long enough. We really seem totally unprepared to make this move, and I think at the very least we should consider going at least till December 31st of this year and make a break right at the end of the calendar year if that would be the pleasure of the vote. And I understand there's a motion on the floor that's been seconded, but there is a lot of work that still needs to be done, and at least one person on the board of directors on the Fair Association doesn't seem, Mr. McGuire, to be ready to turn this over to the fair, turn the fair over to the county. So we don't know how their board is going to vote. So that's just my comments. I'd like to see it go to the end of the lease, which is March of 2022, or at least until December 31st of this year.
Okay.
Chairman Johnson,
Supervisor Angus.
would Supervisor Leinfelder care to maybe compromise and change that date, maybe till the end of the year?
To clarify, was that amending to the end of the calendar year?
Yes.
Yes, calendar year, and I'll, if that's true, I'll retract my second.
I'll modify my action to allow the transition period to go to December 31st of 2021.
You still have a second, Supervisor Angus?
Yes, second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign?
No.
No. Motion carries. Now, as far as fees, do we want to look at fees now?
Chairman Johnson, just as a side note on the fees, we will now have time to set them 60 days out. And if you wanted to do that, then the meeting date would be October 18th versus September 7th.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Johnson,
Supervisor Bishop.
I make a motion that we set a public hearing for October the 18th to establish a fee schedule for operations at the fairgrounds.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same
Aye.
sign? Motion carries. Is there anything else under item number one that we need to discuss? Seeing none, we'll go to item number two. I place this on there. We had directed staff to bring back before the board a complete transition plan that includes reports from all department heads affected by the takeover of Mojave County Fairgrounds. I guess why I put this on is we have no budget for fairgrounds. We have no plan for how we're going to pay this $4 million or do the funding or how many people we will hire. It hasn't, nothing of that's been brought back to us, and we're moving ahead to take over the fair and next year. I guess what is the pleasure of the board as far as taking care of a new department? Is it going to be under Parks Department? Are we going to bring in a fairgrounds director? I guess those are the questions I had when we move ahead, because I'm guessing finance probably has a few questions.
Chairman Johnson, I think this is a discussion that's way overdue. We should have already had this discussion, but as we've made the decision to do this, we need to bring this back as soon as possible for the transition.
Mr. Chairman, board members, we will be happy to bring you a plan. Some components of the plans plan are already in place, and within, if indeed this lease termination date is now the end of the year, and consistent with the fees public hearing date of middle of October, we will be happy to, as part of that discussion, have a plan in front of the board to think through and consider and contemplate at that about that time, just after at the board's leisure, we will have a plan for you.
All right, and that should probably include, I know there's been talk on the board of, if we're going to spend $4 million in 5 years into a place that's over 50 years old and obviously needs a tremendous amount of work, and it's in a location that some of us believe should be moved, we got to decide if it's worth the $4 million or if it's worth it to look at moving the fairgrounds some other location if we're going to spend that kind of money.
Mr. Chairman and board members, if you recall, we were given two separate tasks. One of them was to present to the board some options related to keeping the fairground operations where they have been or bring them back into the county government. That was one part. The other part, with a little bit more time flexibility, was to contemplate or explore the possibilities of moving the fairgrounds. So we were under the impression perhaps there's more time for that. However, if it's the board desire for us to accelerate or expedite that discussion and make it part of the presentation to the board in the middle of October or thereabout, again, we'll do our best to come back to you with some concept that the board at least can, and perhaps what is an absolute minimum investment in the current facility to make sure it's safely operated until time when the board can fully explore and make a decision on the location of it.
I guess what concerns me is we've already told the fair board that we're going to take over next year. Is October, when it comes to us for a decision, is that soon enough, or does that give us enough time to, make the decision? I mean, it's a big decision we're making on moving forward with, the amount of money we have. I don't know, does the board have any concerns over that, or just me? Because we had this was brought up at last meeting. I thought this was already thought through and we had all that information, but we don't have it.
Mr. Chairman,
risk, all these people have to be involved because, like I said, what the fairgrounds has now is a private concern. We fall under a whole lot different venue where the risk management, personnel, and all those people fall into it. So,
Mr. Chairman and board members, I'd like to just probably clarify one point, and that is um, if you break the improvements to the fairground into two buckets, one is a must for the safety and security of the public, and the other is visionary improvements and expansion and so on. You would notice that the minimum, that the required improvements are not on the magnitude of millions. It's certainly not millions. So I just wanted to perhaps clarify that. We'll be happy to quantify those and come to you with a number that has been revisited and vetted. But expansion and enhancement, I guess those one could spend as much money as one wants, but the must improvements are not in that order, Mr. Chair.
And is everybody happy with the October date?
Chairman Johnson,
Supervisor Bishop?
I am happy with the October date. I think our staff can pull that together because they've already been working on that. So I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to bring back before the board a complete transition plan by October to include relocation of the fairgrounds for consideration. And that location, well, that'd be my motion, but I also wanted to comment that I'd like to see the location under consideration someplace west of Kingman, closer to the other communities of Lake Havasu and Bullhead City.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our last item, approve and sign an IGA between Mojave County and Coconino County Public Health. So Mojave County can use Coconino County's medical examiner. Does anyone have any questions? I have some questions on this. It says in the lease that the medical examiner should not be entitled to compensation in the form of salaries or be paid vacation or sick days by the county, and that such days do not accumulate for the use of the same at a later date. Previous contracts we've had, it's the responsibility of the bidder to furnish their own vacation days and those things. Now, because we have gone past the contract date, I guess I have a concern that we're paying money. I understand that maybe this is what we have to do, but under the contract that we're continuing with, we don't pay for somebody's vacation. I don't know if Mr. Tyler can answer that or not.
Mr. Chair, I actually don't have an answer to that. I recognize, as you're saying, there's the outgoing contract and this current contract from my understanding is the intent is just to ensure that we're providing and have these services available, but really that's not an answer to your question other than that the county does under its requirements of performing these autopsies, these medical examination services do need to be provided.
Does anybody have any questions on the contract? Do I have a motion on the contract?
Chairman Johnson, I'll make a motion to approve as written.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned.